Can you hear me on this one? Yes, perfect. All right. As she said, I'm Megan, or MewSakura Cosplay. I'm a connoisseur of build books. I love reading them. I love making them.
He's a Buildbook snob.
I am a Buildbook snob. She is right. I have edited many of her build books, and
I give her a blank sheet of paper. All of a sudden, it's got colors and borders, and I'm like, why?
I think of a build book as a piece of art that goes with your costume. You can make it as fancy as you want, or you can make it really simple. It really just depends on what you need to suit your needs. So, as Toma was saying, we're going to talk about some build book basics, and then we have a lot of examples, because I could talk to you about how to make a build book until I turn blue. But I think that showing what we've actually done, and a lot of these are award-winning costumes, so you can kind of see the detail behind it. All right, so first of all, what is a build book? Has anyone here ever made a build book before? Yes? All right, we got some good hands. So basically, for those of you who don't know, a build book is a collection of documentation of how you built the costume. Okay, so you can include construction details, progress photos, character references, material lists, honestly anything you like that you think is going to complement your costume. Build books are very important because it shows the judges the work it took to construct the costume. For me, I use it as a tool later on because inevitably, if I'm going to wear this costume again in a year, I might forget what pieces go with this costume. So I actually use my build book to keep track of what goes with the costume as like a packing list. So later reference. And you can also use it to keep track of costume progress and what's left to be done. So you can literally, if you start on day one on your build book, you can use that to keep track of what you've made and what you have left to make on the costume. And as much as I hate to say it, it's also proof that you made your costume. There was some discussion in the cosplay community a little while ago about people not actually making their costumes they competed in. So if you make your own build book, you have that proof that you made the costume.
There was discussion of like including a selfie of you with a piece of your costume.
Or your cat.
I always have
your
a cat.
Dog.
My animals are always in my build book. At least once.
At least once, yes. So, build book requirements. Always check the contest rules. I always say read the rules regardless of if you have ever competed in that costume contest before, because they can change. Looking through a bunch of contest rules, not a lot of them state specifics for build books. Usually they'll just ask that you bring a reference photo, but it's better to have that documentation with you and them not ask for it than not have it. Because at the end of the day, if you have a very short judging and you give them that build book and they have time to review it later, that's extra that they get to see from you that you didn't get to share earlier.
I mean, case in point, exactly. Like last week, we got 2 minutes to do judging. And my costume had probably 15 different techniques to it. And I got through about 5 before the time ran out. But my build book, literally this build book, was in their hand, and later on I saw them flipping through it, and they mentioned after they gave me my award to the audience, because of this build book, we were able to see everything that she was able to do despite the 2 minutes. So this is not just something that gets looked at in that moment, right? They might not look at it at all in the moment because they're trying to look at you. But after the fact, this could be your lifeline.
Mm-hmm. And I also like to review my build book before I go into judging as another way to remember what I did and what I want to talk about. If you are like me and you get nervous before you go into a judging room, I mean, I can just sit there and review and I know exactly what I'm going to say. So that definitely helps me. So some contests do mention page limits, reference images, and progress photos that they specifically want. The C2E2, the Crown Championship, this is directly from their website, stating what they want when you submit for the contest. So you need to know that ahead of time to make sure you are prepared when you go to submit. Dragon Con is another one that if you do the Friday night contest, they actually require you to submit documentation. And they want photos that is the front, the back, and the side of your costume when you submit. And that's before you ever get to con. That's like I want to say about 2 weeks before is when you have to submit that. So it's always good to know what you need to have prepared when you sign up for the contest. And it also gives you a deadline of, hey, I need to have this costume done in 2 months. And hopefully not just 1 week. And then as Toma was saying, will the judges have time to review before you're judging? At Dragon Con, most of the time, they do review your build book before you ever walk into the room. And so you don't have to go and talk about every single point. Usually they're asking you questions about a single thing. You know, they're like, oh, well, I saw this in your build book. Can you elaborate on it? So they already have prior knowledge of your costume, and then you can just add on to that conversation. And in some cases where you're bringing your paper build book in to the judging, they review it after, like with Toma's. So that's another thing to think about is there going to be time beforehand, or is it going to happen after? Yes?
Do you know any of the specifics for GalaxyCon?
They don't really require one prior. You will just have to, it's better to have it when you go into your judging. There's no like length limits or anything. Those judges are going to be very fluid with whatever you hand them.
Yeah, pretty much the only thing from competing there is they have asked that you have your reference and then you have some kind of progress photos. They're not very specific with you need to have a build book or anything. They just want to see, did you make the costume? If you're entering in the certified
The
category.
only one that asks for craftsmanship.
Yeah, and then the only one that, the uncertified where you didn't make it yourself, the creator has to be on a call. They have documentation about that in the rules, but other than that, they don't have like specific guidelines.
I think for them, it's basically a proof that it was made by someone, either you.
I can't say personally because the judges do change, but I
Yeah.
will tell you, you will not get it back.
Yeah, you will not.
if you leave it with them.
It'll be
a
theirs.
a lot of contests will try and give you back your build book. Like here, if you bring us a build book, you will get it back if you come to feedback. We'll make sure you get it back if you want it. But some contests will say that if you bring one, you will not get it back. So
Yeah, so you don't want to go too fancy for one like GalaxyCon where you're probably not going to get it back. But unless you're just like, yes, have this book that I
just take it.
published for you that I never want to see again. Like, no, don't waste the money. But yeah, cons like this where we have like a designated feedback session and you're going to get it back, yeah, go put it in a nice plastic.
yeah,
thing
we'll talk about like the finishing and how to present it and everything later. But how to get started and decide on your cosplay. That's the number one thing of how you're going to get started. Once you decide on what cosplay you want to make, however you decide that, you're going to want your reference images, materials, and to decide on what parts you're going to make of the costume. Every costume is going to be different on what you're going to do, what your time limit is, but everyone decides on how to make costumes differently. So however that works for you, that's how you'll start. And pick a contest or convention. When is the deadline? Make sure you have enough time. Don't be like us. Don't be. We are last minute cosplay for a reason. And then choose a program to use. Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Publisher, Canva, Google Docs, etc. Honestly, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the same results from all of these. It just depends on your preference. Toma likes to use Canva. I've seen a lot of people use Canva these days because there's a lot of different fancy things you can add. I personally use Publisher just because I have access to it. But when I first started making costumes, I just use Word. It's very annoying to put pictures in there, but you can do it. PowerPoint works great too. So whatever you have access to, you can make it work. Start early.
Why do you keep telling them to do things we don't do?
Do as I say, not as I do. Take pictures from day one. If you're going fabric shopping, take pictures. Collect your stuff. Because you can't go back and take progress pictures. If you're in the middle of sewing something, take a picture. Because once you're done sewing, you're not going to be able to get that photo of you putting on decorative stitching or anything like that.
She yelled at me last year because I didn't have enough pictures for watching.
I sure did. I was like, well, you better take pictures of something. Make it work. This is a picture of my background. Anytime I think about a costume, I make a folder and I make a publisher file to make my build book. Does that mean I'm starting on it? Not necessarily, but it's there. So as soon as I take a picture or think about something, or buy fabric or patterns or anything like that, it's going to go in that folder, and I'm going to put a little note in the publisher file. It's not going to be pretty, but it's going to be there. If you have a hard time remembering to take photos, have an accountability friend. In our group chat, there's just random photos. I don't expect a comment. I'm just like, here's what I'm working on today. Continue whatever other chat we're having. But they're there. Because I use Facebook Messenger, I can literally go and just download all of them after the fact when I'm going to build my build book. But they're there. If you have friends that you're in a group chat or you're making a group costume, use the group chat, toss your photos in there. This is what I'm working on at. Or if you're good at social media, unlike me, you can post on your stories. And then that way you know you have this collection of photos that you can use later on when you go to make your build book. And then take notes as you go. You can either do a notebook or add it directly to your document. It doesn't really matter because sometimes you will end up with pictures you don't know what they are. What did I take a picture of? Why is this here?
Me staring at it like, what did I do?
What was I working on? You'll probably figure it out in the end, but you can make your life easier. But yeah, so every costume right there. Are these going to get finished one day? Hopefully. But they're there. So this is my folder for my Sakizo Marigold, which was my, what year was it? 2021? Whatever it is. Best in Needlework for the Ultimate Cosplay Championship. So when I was making my build book, I started sorting all of my pictures where they belong. So as I was using them, I put them in the folder. So I knew where they were going to go and what I was going to use them for. And then I have my miscellaneous, just whatever. But the more organized you are, the easier it is, I promise. Simple versus stylish. I like really pretty build books. Toma doesn't really care if they're pretty or not. The most important thing is that, you have everything you've made and your details in there and it flows well. You can make it pretty later if you want to.
Me caring a little bit, not caring at all.
If you don't have time, then there's no time to make it pretty. That's okay. You're never going to get judged on a build book being pretty versus being functional. It's extra, a build book is always going to be extra. It's never going to subtract from your score. It's always extra. And then I put this in here of active versus passive voice. I come from a scientific background, so I was always taught to write in a very passive voice of the wig was styled in pigtails, not putting myself in there. I mean, it's understood that I did this, but some people write as, I styled the wig. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you, however it works for you. I just put that in there because everyone's writing style is different, and mine is very different from my friends. So when I'm editing their build books, I have to be like, let me not try and change their own wording.
That's what you do anyway.
Because I will. So however you get your point across, that's fine. Okay, so the very first thing I learned when making build books many, many years ago, and maybe I'll bring out my very first build books because they are very different than what I make now, is remember MAB. So you're going to want to list the things you made, you altered, and you bought. So every contest has a percentage number of what you made in your costume. And sometimes it's like, well, how do I determine this number? Well, right here you can use MAB to figure that out. You're going to list everything that you made specifically, 100%. Like if you make your bodice or, your underclothes, whatever, that's made. Altered is things that you've modified, like your wig, your shoes, accessories, anything like that. And then bought is things that are just purchased. If you don't modify it at all, that's going to be your bought. Like shoes is most frequently what it is in my case. So, all right, here's my Sophie, and you can see that listing. So I made my hat, my bodice, skirt, the boot covers, corset, and petticoat. Then I altered the wig and bought nothing because I made my boot covers. But, you know, depending on the costume, that list is going to change. Here, you go first.
Do judges like care like about zippers, buttons, any of that? Like, do you list that kind of thing?
No, you don't have to list notions because, yes, parts of the costume, because you're going to use those notions in creating the pieces.
I mean, if you want to say what fabrics you used, yes, but they don't care if you use 12 buttons or 2 zippers. They don't have time for that.
Yes.
And in the maid, if you use a partner that means like maid, is it made like where would be?
So I'll speak about like towards 3D printing. So if you are printing it yourself, I would put it in the made because you printed it, finished, whatever, and then when you go to that page where you talk about that prop or whatever, you will put the file name and who it is from. Like credit that person. You know, I bought this file from here. And, you know, depending on, you can do a link. But if you printed it, put in the work you did. So I 3D printed it with whatever filament or whatever, and then how you finished it. So you're going to still talk about what you did to that item, but you're going to give credit to the file. Same thing for like embroidery. If you buy a digital file for embroidery, but you have your own embroidery machine, you embroidered it, you went through that effort, but you still need to credit the designer of who made that file. Now, if you made the file yourself,
You definitely want to talk
you're
about
going to
it.
talk about how you made the file.
And same thing with clothes.
Yes. So if you are altering a jacket, you can say, I bought this jacket, you know, this is how I modified it. And then that would go in the altered category because it was a pre-purchase piece and then you altered it. You didn't make it from scratch, you altered it. Okay?
Would that be worth putting like a before and after picture of the jacket?
Yes.
Yeah.
How much you altered?
Yes, absolutely. The more you alter, the more it's going to be your work. So list out all of the things you did to alter it.
Yeah, especially if it's something that you like. Say you bought it and it started out blue, and then you ombre dyed it to a blue-black, and then you like ripped out all of the sleeves and put something that like, the more
Yeah.
you altered it, you definitely want to show that progression in the book.
In the back?
So if you buy a piece of clothing, take apart and just use fabric or something completely else, is it made or is it altered?
So
So if it starts like a T-shirt, but it ends up as a hat,
I bought a lace dress, used the lace to make the
I would say you made that.
that would be made because it's not the original item. So if you are completely taking something apart and making something completely new, that's made. But if you are just altering the fit, the color, that kind of thing, that's altered. Okay? Any other questions on this one? Okay. I also sometimes will put techniques used just as like a highlight. You don't have to do that. I just think it's a little fun thing to just be able to point out real quick. You know, I made my hat. I used millinery work, so that's not something you see. I don't list everything. I just list the things that like you don't see very often there. Keep the flow. Use bullet points. A paragraph is hard to read, and I will tell, even if judges are reading this after the fact, they still need to be able to review your build book quickly. So if they have to read through a whole paragraph, it's going to take them a bit of time. And then try and keep the pages in the order that you're going to talk about in judging. I personally usually go head to toe, but you can also go toe up just to keep your flow of like what you're talking about. It helps set the pace of like, oh, I made my hat and then I styled my wig and then keep going down. Sometimes things don't fit into categories. That's okay. You can kind of fit them in where you need to. And don't be afraid to rearrange the pages as you go. I do that all the time. Okay, what not to add. Build books are your own thing, but some things just to keep in mind for, you know, time with judging is if you want to add a story, make it short, just because time is always an issue. And don't purposely add what went wrong, okay? Anytime you go into judging, never point out, this didn't work, this looks bad, because there are, situations where we're not going to notice it. Talk about the positives. I want to know the good things. What were you successful in? Highlight that. So if you used a technique and it didn't work well, but you figured out some innovative way or just a second way that worked, talk about that. Talk about how you learned, because we love to know what you learned making this costume. Did you find a new technique? Like they were saying in the previous panel of the HTV didn't work for that specific flow. And so they thought about a process that would work instead. We love that. I was dyeing Toma's fabric as an ombre, and it's not quite dark enough, so she ended up airbrushing it to make it a little bit darker. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to talk about, we dyed the base fabric, but it wasn't good enough, so we did something else. Well, Toma learned how to airbrush, so we're going to talk about she learned how to airbrush to match that. So make it into a positive.
Now it looks like silk painting. It's much cooler.
It is much cooler, okay?
Kat.
Tell me what to leave out, what to include in. All right, now, so you've got the Sophie costume, have the hat box by the door, you walk out and you leave it.
Oh, forgotten costume pages.
Or you go, well, you need to see it in the Buildbook. What's probably going to be a decision to make there?
I would still talk about it as something you made. It is hard because the judges can't physically see it. But you did put the work into it, so I would still leave it in there. Now, if it's a part of the costume that it doesn't really matter, you can take that page out and just do what's in front of you.
I did that. I forgot a piece at AZ one time, and I started to walk to judging, and I went, oh my God, my front panel. Mm-hmm. And I went, open Buildbook, tear out page, stuff in pocket, onward we go. Don't talk about it, doesn't exist.
Yeah, so if your Buildbook allows for that, you can do that. My friend Mina forgot her big back bow on one of her costumes, and she did the same thing. She just took the page out, didn't mention it. We got best group.
Yeah, in some cases too, like even if you don't talk about it, but you leave that page in,
mm-hmm. They might not
even notice it, and they'll be going back through like, oh, I wish I had seen that. But yeah. So in some cases, if you don't talk about it, and it's there, they'll kind of be like, oh, that's a thing.
Yeah.
So it comes down to
either way.
Yeah, it could go either way. So it really comes down to personal preference, how you want to go about it. If it's like a small piece that you think might have just not been noticed, just let it go. If it's a major piece, you might want to
talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes, I didn't forget this piece. I just left it at home.
We will say, so sad.
So sad, yeah. We judges understand. As somebody who
We've done it.
has literally left a major part of my costume at home, and my mother had to meet me halfway to bring me said parts, we have all been there.
Last year, AZ. Yep.
Yep.
She still won Best in Show, by the way.
Thanks, Mom.
Mom wins trophy, yay!
Mom does have the trophy. So yeah, it's really going to depend on the costume, on the contest, how you feel, if you need it or not. And some things, there was a discussion in one of the cosplay support groups about less important things that judges want to hear. And so I was kind of reading through that and adding some of those is cost. The judges were talking about how, some people have more resources than others. So cost, it's really going to be up to you. No
one really cares that you spent $200 on 100% silk for your costume. They don't want to think about it. You don't want to think about it.
Where I will say it can benefit you. So when I made this Sophie costume, I used everything that I already owned. So it was a goal of mine to not buy much for this costume. So in my story, I only bought 2 bottles of Rit dye to make this costume. And the reason I put this is because that shaped the techniques I used to make the costume, because I used a polyester voile for the skirt, and so the flow is not like a chiffon that most people use to make this outfit. But when I went into judging, I was talking about these are the techniques I used based on the materials that I had. So if you can shape it like that, talk about it.
I love telling them it's a stash build.
Yeah. So if it shapes the techniques you use, definitely add that in. Time spent making the costume, depending on your skill level, things may take you longer. Or you may be really quick like Toma is, and you can pump out a costume in a day. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. So if you're really proud of something and you want to talk about the time, you can, but don't make it a huge focus. Focus on the parts that you did and just talk about the background of it.
I don't know who actually sits there and counts how many hours it takes to make something, but it depresses me when I think about it.
Yeah. I did in my Seraphim's Blessing, when we get to that, I did put the embroidery time because I did all of the machine embroidery on that costume. So I did put the time just to show this is how much time I spent embroidering on this costume, and this is how much I saved from doing it by hand. As something for me, do the judges care about that as much as I do? Probably not. But I thought it was neat. So if it means something to you, add it in because this is your build book. Okay? Yes, question.
That'd be something like an interesting thing for printing time for printing. Oh, this took 4 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to just throw a little note like that in, that's a fun fact. I love fun facts, but you don't have to make a whole,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, it took an hour to do the outer wall, and the infill was, that doesn't matter. But if you want to say, it took 4 days, yeah, that's great. And character background. So unless it relates to the costume and the decisions you made, you don't really have to add that in. Just like you don't have to be in character when you go to judging. If you're doing a Dr. Stone cosplay and you're using rough spun fabrics because the time, mention that. That's decisions you made to make the costume.
Yeah, if you made specific choices based on the character because of what is in the series or in the book, we chose silk because it's ancient China, that kind of stuff you would include because you have a specific reason for doing what you did. But if you go into, Dr. Stone was born in this and he then got nobody cares. We ain't got time for the whole series rundown. So leave that part out.
All right, and then going back to submissions. In-person costume contest, please bring a printed copy. In color if you can. Just because technology can fail.
Sometimes FedEx happens. We have definitely printed build books at a convention.
If you don't have a printer, that's okay. The library is great. If you cannot print a build book, you can always email the director and see if you can submit it that way or bring your phone in. We had one person at one contest actually have a tablet and they had their build book. But do keep in mind that means we can't review it after the fact. We have to look at it right there while you're there. And a lot of times we really want to look at you and not just the tablet. So just keep that in mind. You can also do handwritten build books. If you want to just print out a bunch of pictures and then just kind of write in, I did this, I've done that. My Mau Mau build book, it's literally all just pictures, and then I just wrote a few notes. If you don't have time for all that, just throw your pictures on there and call it a day. And then for digital submissions, please submit it as a PDF. It's so much easier than a PowerPoint file or some other kind of file that people may not be able to access. And you can also condense the size of a PDF for the digital submissions. I know I had an issue with that with Dragon Con because my build book had so many photos.
Too big.
So watch your file size. And I guess we can talk about making them fancy or making them simple. If you're going to... Yeah.
I got all of them. I got them.
Yes,
I have
question.
chaos.
What are some of the best cons for this type of competition and craftsmanship? I know a lot of them have them, but which one's really good, really checked and
Oh boy, you getting diving in some deep right there. Ours. No.
Yes. We appreciate.
As far as if you really want to go hardcore craftsmanship, top of the level, you're talking your Crown Championships, your, NYCC, anything Reed Pop that throws money at you. You know, that's where you're going to get your top costumes.
What was the first one you said?
The Crown Championships, they run qualifiers. So there's like C2, E2 in Chicago. There's one on the West Coast. I think Florida's got one of them at MegaCon, I think it is. Or maybe they're the other one. I don't know. There's so many, like...
Yeah, MegaCon is
Fan Expo. Okay, yeah. So, there's so many, like, higher level competitions now that you kind of have to, like, really search it out. But, that's, like, your top tier. That's where you get, like, the people with the massive builds.
Actually, I want to do like really nice, like, professional looking stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't. I've only done really galaxy.
Yeah, your top tier is going to be your C2, E2. I think that's the one that's most well known. And they, like I said, that's the Crown Championships of Cosplay. That's the one that has like 4 qualifiers around the country, and then the finals happen at C2, E2, and you compete against other countries. Like every country has a qualifier for this, and they all meet at C2, E2, and that's the finals for the world. As far as like conventions that are a little bit more like local and like mainstream, if you want
really
like a
depends.
step up to before that, probably your us. No, yeah, that's a hard one because you're going to get something from everything. That you know, every con's going to have its own little quirks. Craftsmanship heavy though, you're going to look at us, your GalaxyCon, Dragon Con's Friday night.
Whole Mat has some good
Whole
ones. If you want
Mat, yeah. If you're
international.
thinking international, Holiday Matsuri and Youmacon. They're the ones that host the qualifiers for your international competitions, and Anime Expo hosts the qualifier for the World Cosplay Summit. Do we spoiler?
You can.
Which, by the way, in approximately 10 days, we will be going to compete for World Cosplay Summit.
In true last minute fashion.
In true last-minute fashion, we're not working on them in the hotel room right now. But yeah, so when we're talking like the silks and stuff, we're literally, it's current.
Part of the idea for this panel was actually we were going to build a build book together, but
For this.
yeah, we don't have time right now. Anyway, so this was one of my very first build books. You will see a noticeable lack of pictures because I didn't take pictures. It's all words. If you can follow it, good luck.
I'm impressed you typed it up. I mean, my first build books were all handwritten
Yeah.
with photos I printed off at like CVS.
So I still have that, made, alter, bought, but in different wording. Then I have bits about the construction. And then, of course, I have my reference photo. Here I have an entire materials list. If you keep this good track of what you've used, great for you. If you don't have like 10 fabric store trips, what are you even doing with your life? You've got it together more than I do.
I don't normally do this, but for this one, I actually put in swatches of my fabrics into my build book. Just because this particular costume, I layered fabrics, and so I wanted them to see what the original fabric was, and then the fabric that went over top of it, so that they could see that to create the final piece, it was this many things to get there. So you can put whatever you want. I also have my like lace trims in here, like not something I usually do, but with a costume that has like a lot of techniques. And you do have maybe a little bit extra that you kind of want to be like, here, see, this is what the process looks like, or this is a failed one,
Yeah.
It's good to include those things because they see that it's not a simple process necessarily. It took a little bit of effort to get to that point.
So what was it? 2019? Yeah, 2019. I actually won Best in Show here in my Easter Bunny costume, and this is the build book I had. So obviously I have my little reference image. If you know Sakizos, that's it. That's your only reference photo. Good luck. Techniques I used, made, altered, bought, and I did this one in Word. So talking about this is word heavy.
That's really word heavy.
It's word heavy. I told you I'm very wordy. So this is a bit much. That's why we're going over examples. I can tell you what not to do. And then I have my photos that go with each section. So this is my headpiece, and then I included the part of the reference. If you have multiple references, that's where it's good to include those kind of photos, just so you can be like, here's a direct comparison of what this looks like versus what, the reference image looks like.
Yeah, like for instance, for Lelouch, I had the main photos in the beginning. Sorry, this one is not stapled very well. I steal my jackets and reuse them. And then later in the book, because I was making the helmet, I actually included just like a front, side, and where is it? So much vacuum forming. Oh my God. I included like the different views of the helmet so that when they could see those 10 pages of progress, they understood. I don't know why I keep hitting that. I'm sorry. I can't see it. Perfect vision. But yeah, that way they knew they didn't have to go back to this front because sitting here on the corner,
So, yeah, all the
that
way down there.
they had more views of what the helmet looked like and how it would change depending on what angle he was looking, just about.
So yeah, if you are directly copying something, just slide it on there if you have the space. Very word heavy here, but I am very wordy.
It's very wordy.
It is. Like I said, these were my first kind of build books. And so everything is in its own little section. So bias tape, talking about that, where it's at. Front panel. So as you can see here with this one, I actually bolded the parts of what we're talking about instead of it, usually now I make a big sign or big text. These I just bolded it. So it's kind of that example.
For example, for my rose one, I've got the upper titles of what I was doing. I don't know. It's chaos. I've created chaos.
You have created chaos.
But yeah, so I just made each page and have a title above it. And I always do, I don't know if it's probably different from you, but I always do one technique per page. So
Yeah,
if
I
I've got
mostly do.
quilting, it's a quilting title and the process. If I do resin casting, it's a resin casting and the process. That way there's enough of a variety of techniques displayed, and each one's got enough room to really see the process laid out.
So this one is the Lady Marigold, where I showed you my folders. Front page, I have everything about the costume. They actually wanted you to put your name, your cosplay handle, your email, and what category you were in. I was in the needlework category. Your reference photo, and then my made, altered, bought, and then I put a little snippet about where the artwork's from and a little bit about making the costume. This one, I made all of my undergarments, so I actually included, this was online submission, so they didn't see you until after this judging process.
Literally after they had chosen who
Yeah, and you did a runway and everything. So you had to submit all of your front, your side, like a whole photo shoot kind of thing, and then a video when you did the contest. So I have so many layers under here. This was actually me getting undressed from the costume. So as I took off my layers, my mom took photos for me. Thanks, Mom.
Mom's the MVP.
Yeah, Mom MVP. So the judges could actually see this is what the entire costume, because half the time you can't see all of these underlayers. If you come in the judging room and just start stripping, that's up to you.
I've literally
we've
done
all
it.
done it.
I will walk in with 4 layers. I walk out in my underwear. Well, I did a Korean hanbok, and I literally had made every layer, and I was like, listen, I'm going to be talking really fast and stripping while you're looking at me. So here you go. Here's layer 1. This is what I did. Here we go. Here's layer 2. This is what I did. And handed them off to the judges, and I'm like, you can look at everything. It's clean inside and out. Here we go. I'm naked.
If you are not comfortable with that, these kind of photos will suffice.
Listen, if you know Korean historical undergarments, I really wasn't naked. It's still very covered.
And then this I was specifically more wordy with, because since I wasn't there personally talking for this judging, I had to put all of this in words, because they needed to know. They needed to know.
Also, again, this one was all online. She wasn't there to talk about the costume. They were literally judging it by the build book and the video.
I actually submitted a small snippet of me making the hat, literally doing the hat as part of my submission, because I was like, you need to know I made this hat. I sure did. It's raffia and straw, because I'm a crazy person. Thank you. I also made my own lace front wig because I'm crazy. I do.
She hates herself.
I hate myself.
both do. It's
We both
fine.
do. It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, so each section has its own little thing. I made my own lace. Like, talk about, if you did this, talk about it. I want to know about it. Tell me all the things. The crazier, the better for me. So yeah, every section has its own little snippet, and I talk about what's in the photos. If you don't know what to write, just look at your photos. Just look at the photo and say, oh, I'm making flowers. They're made out of felt. Great. Perfect. This one is like where I was making the trim for the skirt and doing the draping. So I showed the draping process for the skirt. If your room is messy or your craft space is messy, we're not going to judge you because ours are too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Don't look at my photos too close.
Yeah. You're going to see all this crazy stuff in the background. That's okay. I'm not going to judge
And
you.
usually a cat.
And usually a cat.
The best supervisor. They do.
In my house, yes. They do.
I mean, everyone needs a supervisor to make sure you're working correctly. Yep. Oh, yeah. No, that's literally, I'm pretty sure she's laying on the fabric for the cuffs in this one.
So if there's a lot of steps in your process, show them if you got them. More photos, the better. And then they wanted a lot of detail photos, front, side, back, and all of that. So I included slides of just the up-close photos. So this was for the Ultimate Cosplay Championships. They did one at Home At. And they did 3 categories, armor, needlework, and out of this world. And I was in the needlework category. And so they actually selected people, like when you did your submissions, and yeah, it was the whole thing. But yeah, talking about bonus for pets. There's my puppy. He wanted to be in the photo.
So you've got 7 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
You want to open it up to...
More questions?
Oh, hey, it's me!
Oh, hey, it's the build book I made for Toma.
Why do you have... Oh, that's why.
Why do I have this? Because I made your build book.
I think it's here somewhere.
It probably is.
Who knows? I have made chaos.
She literally threw photos at me, and I made her a build book. It happens.
Is it that one? Could be that one.
Yeah. I'm like, just tell me what you did.
All the things.
All the things. So she literally did like a write-up of what she did, and I made her a pretty build book. You know, I'm not going to judge you if your friend makes your build book. It's fine. Like I said.
Huh? Friends can help.
Yeah, it's fine.
I think that was where I had absolutely zero time to
You
actually
didn't,
make my build book.
I just made your build book. This is a combined build book. If you're doing a group cosplay, you can either separate it out by character. So I did mine. My slides are all pink, and her slides are yellow. So that kind of separates it. Now, if you are all making, say, like idol costumes, where everything is very similar, you can combine all of those in the same thing. So if you're all using the same fabrics, that's a slide. Whatever techniques, the skirts, the panels, you can make those all the same slides for everybody and have one big build book. It's really just going to depend on your group, your characters. If one person is making X part for every single person, they make that slide. Done. But if everyone's making their own thing, just make sure your techniques are very similar, or mention why y'all did separate things. So, all right, with 5 minutes, what kind of questions do we have? Yes, in the back. Okay.
No such thing. No.
So it's going to depend on the costume, and it's going to depend on the competition. If you bring me a 100-page build book,
we ain't looking at it.
I'll read it because I'm nosy, and I love build books.
Not I.
But nobody else is going to have time for that.
I can't remember what contest it was, but it was one of the online ones.
UCC,
and,
UOCC,
and
had a 100-something page build book.
They were like, we went through it, but it was like 140 pages.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's too much.
But it really depends on what you're making. So when we have novices come in, I don't expect you to have a very long build book, unless you decide you want to make a lot more stuff, then you're probably going to have a longer build book. But it's going to depend on what costume you're making, how many pieces you're making, and how many techniques you're going to use.
I think my build books range anywhere from 10 to 15 or 16 pages.
Yeah. I mean, even my one for my online is 15 pages.
Yeah,
I could have made it
that's a
longer.
good sweet spot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you go over 20, I expect a lot of techniques.
Yeah.
Like
I said, 1 page per technique will usually get you what you need to get across, except for the helmet where I literally had like 10 pages because I was showing the entire vacuum forming process and everything. But like one page per technique.
Seraphim's Blessing was 19.
Yeah.
So
but you had a lot of techniques.
Yeah. The more techniques, the longer it's going to be. But yeah. So it's a gut feeling of how much is too much.
If you don't want to read it,
no one else is going to want to read it. Yeah.
Right here.
Do you use like good quality of photos? Like you took it with your camera and it's like audio.
Every photo I take is
on my phone. Like I said, we don't care what's in the background. It's fine. As long as you can see what you're trying to, crop it if you need to, but as long as we can get the idea of what you're doing, that's what's important.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have professional photos.
Yeah.
All of those photos of Marigold we're taking on my phone. So, yes.
You speak to fonts?
Depends.
Eligible, like legible, like do not go cursive on us.
Depends on if it's a digital submission. Like this was digital, so my font is much smaller because they looked at this because this was for Dragon Con. So they had this on their computer. So if it's a digital submission, they can zoom in and do all that. So you can go smaller.
I usually tend to be the 12 to 14 point font just because I want it to be larger enough for them to read it. Because, I mean, when they're going through this, they're not going to want me to go, I can't read. I only have one eye right now. I can't read my own build book. But, yeah, you don't want them having to squint at your tiny font versus, hello, spam, versus actually looking at your costume. So, yeah, legible is better. A font color that's not going to burn your eyes is best.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No?
No.
So we do have a plethora of build books up here. If
We
you
can
guys
find a spot outside.
want to look at them. Obviously, it's like 158. I'm not lying when I say I can't see. So we will bring them out there because we don't have anything else until opening ceremonies. So we are happy to stand around and let you flip through our pages.
And talk to you about choices we made.
Yeah.
You can judge me. I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't love myself.
And we are on Instagram and whatnot, so if you ever have a question about anything, really,
on.
you can message us. And
Those are QR codes to
to the
Instagram.
group Instagram and her Instagram.
Oh, it's gone now. Okay, never mind.
Too bad.
Too bad.
Find us.